Welcome back for episode 3 of the Social Permaculture Online Bootcamp. I'm your host, Ben Habib. This time that we're in right now, with COVID-19, with social distancing and lockdowns and self-isolation, this is opening a window for something different to bubble up and emerge. And in this open window, there's a chance here for deeper penetration of ideas about sustainable and regenerative living and about how to structure up our social institutions and economic systems in ways that are more life and earth affirming. And these ideas are starting to enter the mainstream in a way that they perhaps weren't before. And it's in this moment that it's really amazing to see that permaculture practitioners all around the world are stepping up, sharing knowledge and information and practical skills online. This is the moment that we've been preparing for, and it's great to see all of our colleagues rising to the challenge and being there in the moment. I'll share as much of the work of my permaculture colleagues as I can, so check out the show notes for each episode because there'll be links. But in this video, I want to explore the idea that we might reclaim more control over our subsistence, and I propose the idea of the gift circle or a gift network as an easily replicable model of community-level exchange that we can use to obtain some of the things we need outside of the money economy. It's an easily replicable adaptation to economic shocks, just like the one that we're living through now. Now, building on the work from the Face COVID activity in the previous video, we're starting here from a place that's grounded in our values, and we're working with what's in our power to control to make positive action. So we're trying to lay the foundation for sharing and reciprocity that we'll need to develop if we want to bring alternative economic systems into mainstream practice in the post-COVID-19 and the post-carbon era. The COVID-19 crisis has really exposed the brittleness and fragility of the economic system and our vulnerability within that economic system when things start to break down. Now, I'm relatively fortunate to still be employed at the moment, at least for now, though there is a wave of job losses that are coming to the higher education sector, like it has in many other sectors of the economy. I was horrified to see the large lines of newly unemployed people queuing up at Centrelink offices over the last few weeks, and the extreme duress that people are under at the moment because they've lost their jobs, there's no income coming in, and the ripple effects that that's having on their lives and the lives of the people around them. And I know a lot of people that are in this position, and I've got extreme empathy for their situation. And it really shows that we're only one paycheck away from extreme vulnerability. And that's a real weakness in the system. There's not a people care element in how the economy is set up. We're seeing that the COVID-19 crisis is exacerbating existing inequalities. So while a lot of our leaders are saying, we're all in this together, the virus doesn't discriminate. Well, the virus doesn't discriminate, but the society that the virus is impacting does discriminate. So we're seeing that some of the lowest paid and most insecure workers are now essential to the continued functioning of our society. But this also means that they're at heightened risk of infection because they can't self-isolate. These are the very people that are getting paid minuscule wages under awful working conditions with great job insecurity are the ones we're now relying on. And that has to change after this crisis. We're seeing that the mass casualisation of the workforce, which already left so many people in chronic financial insecurity, now the COVID-19 shutdown has wiped out their incomes. And many of these people aren't eligible for some of the government assistance that's going around. So the vulnerability of people in the casual workforce has increased with this economic shock. We've got a long-standing housing crisis that's left so many people in jeopardy of losing the roof over their heads. So if there's no work and people are losing incomes, they can't pay the rent. And you've got, on the flip side of this, all these landlords who've over-leveraged themselves into debt to buy investment properties, and now they're caught with their pants down too. So there's this unsustainability in the housing sector that, again, that's been exposed by the economic shock of COVID-19. So what a fucking disaster. But it's also a predictable fucking disaster. These vulnerabilities and inequalities are nothing new. That which is unsustainable won't be sustained, and that's what we're finding now. The lesson for the everyday person from neoliberal economics that we've been subjected to for the last few decades is that our society is hyper-competitive and that we have to look out for ourselves and that it's dog eat dog out there. And we see this reflected in behaviours like the hoarding of key goods, including toilet paper, which was the first of the goods that started being hoarded here in Australia, and that spread to other consumables. And the uncertainty and the conflicting information about both the virus and the government responses to the virus, that certainly hasn't helped. We've seen that just-in-time supply chains are not resilient against systemic shocks because human movement has had to be shut down. So if you've got long transnational supply chains, combine that with border controls and restrictions on movement, that's thrown international commerce into disarray and jeopardy. But this shitstorm of inequalities and vulnerabilities highlights a deeper issue with the economic system. And that's that most of us are alienated from our means of subsistence. So what does this mean? It means that we can't directly provide for our survival needs. We're a step removed from being able to look after ourselves. We have to work to earn a wage to get the money we need to buy our survival needs from the market. So we have to buy stuff instead of providing it for ourselves. And in times of crisis, this is a vulnerability for a lot of people. For many other people, this has been a permanent vulnerability because they've been on the edge of the money economy. So our ability to purchase our survival needs, our subsistence needs, depends on our access to money. Now, while this has always been problematic, right now, relying on the market for our subsistence needs is failing spectacularly for a lot of people because unemployment is so high and supply chains have been decimated. So right here, we can see a grassroots response to the COVID-19 crisis. As much as we can work to minimise our reliance on buying things on the market and reclaim, as much as we can, our control over our means of subsistence. We can boost our ability to look after ourselves as much as possible. So that sounds sensible enough. There's a clear logic to that. But where do we start? Now, this is a harder question, and we're far from the first people to have thought this through. Subsistence sovereignty has been an element that cuts across all kinds of different struggles, from worker struggles, First Nations sovereignty and anti-colonial movements, peasant farmers movements, food sovereignty movements, just to name a few. And it's an underlying theme of permaculture practice as well. And when we look back historically at these movements and struggles, we see that subsistence sovereignty is often met with resistance and violence from the state and from the powerful. However, moments such as the present, when these embedded orders and power structures are breaking down, these are moments when we can imagine, and more importantly, when we can bring into practice ways of reasserting some control over our subsistence needs. But these moments require collective action. This reimagining can't be done by atomized individuals. And this is why the permaculture movement as a social movement and as a community of practice is so important, because it can be a vehicle for collective action based on a knowledge base rooted in sustainability, care for earth, care for people, and care for fairness and justice. But at a basic grassroots level, there's a couple of steps involved in attempting to reduce our dependence on the market for our essentials. So on the one hand, this could mean developing ways to produce more of what we need rather than having to buy it. So food production, for example, is the logical place to start, along with other activities that could be considered as part of a household, kitchen economy, homestead economy kind of thing. And you can ramp up the scale and complexity of that from there, the more you can act collectively at a community and a municipal level. But on the other hand, it also prompts us to look for non-monetary means of exchange. And this is where we can look to things like sharing systems, gift economies, the commons and barter arrangements, and social technologies like that, where we can exchange goods and services without needing money for that. Now, money is an ingenious social technology for mediating the exchange of goods and services, but as we've seen, it has really significant drawbacks, especially during a time of economic crisis. Having reliable systems of exchange is a basic economic necessity because complete self-sufficiency isn't really viable for most people. So we need some system for exchange, but the question is, what if we're not using money as the basis for exchange? What are we going to put in its place? And that's what I want to get at here, where we can start to put in the foundations for something different. And I think while we're laying that foundation, focusing specifically here on the exchange side of the coin is important because this is more complicated and requires greater coordination. Producing more of what you need is something that you can do at the individual and household level. But having a different means of exchange, there's a higher level of complexity to what you're doing. So there's two key ideas here that I think are worth considering as we try and build this foundation. Now, the first key idea is the gift economy. Now, the idea of gift economies is that they can facilitate the exchange of goods and services without any explicit agreement for immediate or future rewards. So there's no quid pro quo. It's not necessarily transactional. And ideally, this takes place in a recurring gift exchange that circulates and redistributes wealth throughout a community and serves to build societal ties through reciprocity. So the act of gifting and giving and sharing, that builds social capital through the establishment of a network and continual ongoing networks interaction. So you're building trust. I recommend the work of Charles Eisenstein here, particularly his book, Sacred Economics, which you can find online. And also Charles has done many talks which are available on YouTube. The second idea that's complementary to this is the idea of the commons. So commons are self-organized systems through which communities can manage resources and they can generate value with minimal or no reliance on the market or the state. So the commons are established for the good of everyone. Everyone who's involved in the commons gets to benefit from it, rather than extracting for their own personal benefit. Here, a good person to look at for work on this is David Bollier. Again, he's got lots of material online, and check out the show notes. I'll have some links to some of his work. There are many other researchers who've explored these ideas, and there are many other organizations that are already doing this kind of work. So my hope here is that all of us can start thinking in terms of gift economies and the commons, building on this body of knowledge and work that's already being done, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. But if we can proliferate this kind of thinking, that's the precursor to building alternative community-based economic models from the ground up. So this is a grassroots adaptive response to the moment. And this is the point of the boot camp. We're doing the preparatory work while we're in lockdown so that we can manifest the earth and people-centered economies that we want in the recovery. And the other side of the coin for the bootcamp idea is that this isn't an abstract thought experiment. We need models that we can implement right now, and we're doing actual work to try and construct, put into practice the vision of society that we want to see. So here, in this activity that we'll do now, we're going to construct a basic gift circle or gift network. Now, this is based on an activity that I run in my session on economic regeneration strategies in the permaculture design course at Series. I'd like to credit my permaculture colleague Tanya Brooks from Tasmania for inspiration for this. She ran a version of this at the 2015 Australasian Permaculture Convergence in Penguin in Tassie. And I thought this was great, and it's something that I've incorporated into my PDC teaching. So thank you, Tanya. You're really influential here. The gift circle is a basic version of a gift economy, in which you can start with as few as 2 people. The idea is not to construct some elaborate utopian economic system. but rather it's to set up a functional network of mutual support through reciprocal exchange. Now, you can do this in a friend group, you could do it in your neighborhood or community, or you can do it with any group of people with whom you're likely to have regular contact, or even with new people who you can set up bonds that you will have regular contact with. So this is something you can get happening right now for tangible results. So let's do this. To get your gift circle off the ground, all you need is your group of people and a pen and paper. Each person in the group should compile two lists. In the first list, list A, exhibited on the graphic here, write down 10 goods and services that you need right now. In the second list, write down 10 goods and services that you're able to offer or provide for other people. Now, 10 is an arbitrary number. We'll go with that for now to encourage you to think deeply about what you need and what you can offer. I have found in my PDC sessions over the years that participants doing this activity in class have sometimes found it difficult to compile their list of needs because it's not always easy to ask for help. They've also sometimes found it difficult to list what they can offer because we don't always properly value our knowledge, our skills, and our labour, particularly when there's not a monetary value attached to it. So don't be discouraged if you do find it difficult to flesh out your lists. Just get grounded and be honest about what you need without worrying about what that might look like to someone else. And also be generous to yourself in valuing your unique skills and attributes. Okay, once everyone in the group has compiled their lists, then you can share them with each other. Where there's a match between what someone needs and what someone else in the group can provide, make it happen. Establish that relationship, make the exchange. The scribbled graphic that you see on the bottom left of the picture here, this is a rough network map of the needs and offerings matches that were made by a group of PDC students doing this activity in one of my classes in the series PDC. And they established this with smaller lists of just 5 of their needs and 5 of their offerings. So right here, you can see the density of interaction that's possible from a simple network exchange using the gift circle model. So in this graphic, every time we had a match between a need and an offering, I'd draw the link between the person. So each of the circles represents a person in the group. And you can see the density of interactions is really strong. So if you keep doing this over time, this is you're creating social capital, you're creating bonds of reciprocity. But most importantly, you're looking out for each other. Now, there are already examples of the gift network, gift circle in action online. So you see websites like Rough Trader or Gumtree. There's various permaculture groups on Facebook that are doing this kind of thing. The mutual aid groups that you see springing up in response to the lockdown. This is another example of gift circle thinking. There's nothing magical about this. Why it works is it's a system for connecting people and for being able to help people get what they need. One of the advantages of establishing gift networks is that there's no barriers to entry. Anyone can do it. And it is a facilitation tool for generating exchange outside of the monetized market economy. It creates community and it cements bonds of reciprocity through the power of horizontal networks. So it fosters a culture of people care. And I want you to hold this idea of the power of horizontal networking in mind, because this is something we're going to come back to in future videos. At scales beyond a small group, you can do something similar through ideas like time banking, which makes use of automated online accounting software. And this helps to get us beyond the trust horizon problem. So the trust horizon is the idea that beyond a certain size at village level, where you don't have personalized relationships with people, how do you establish trust? That's one of the roles that money performs in transactions, is to helping you overcome the trust problem. But if we're not using money, you need something else. And so online automated time banking software helps to get us beyond the time banking, the trust horizon issue. I recommend US permaculture practitioner and economics writer Nicole Foss has talked about the trust horizon. So do check that out. Please also do check out the show notes. There's loads of links and citations there for further information on everything we've covered here. So don't just take my word for it. The information I'm presenting here comes from a lot of source material, so please do check that out. This is a time of uncertainty and vulnerability and anxiety, and we get through this by helping each other out. But we don't just talk about helping each other out. We systematically put in place exchange relationships where we can operationalize this at a really tangible level. So that's the idea here. So thanks for watching, much love, and please join me again on the next episode.